Hello, everybody. This is Dale Schweeman with the Schwee View. I'm coming to you today with the subject of police shootings. We've had several police shootings over the history of our country. Several. That's funny. Um, in recent years, they've become quite the hot topic. So, the question we're going to talk about: are police shootings justified? Are the riots afterward justified? In either case, police shootings are interesting. I just saw a video by from the police chief in Chicago who released some um, body cam footage of the most recent police shooting in Chicago in which they killed a man. And he released the body footage, the camera footage from the police officers on scene, live on scene, so that his words were, "We want to release this so that people can see what happened, so that hopefully," how was his words? "We will not rush to judgment and act without knowing all the facts." It's very close to what he said. Now, my situation, I understand and I respect what he's saying. It's coming from a police chief asking the people of his city to not overreact without knowing all the facts. Therefore, don't hurt anybody else. Don't do any more damage. I agree with that. He's asking individuals who live normal lives. They have, I guess, what you would call, what I would like to call normal education, meaning very few of them have had detailed training in or formal training in hand to hand combat or how to deal with yourself in a hostile, life threatening situation. Now, the reason I say all that is this: police officers are specifically trained to deal with life threatening situations. And we have a police chief saying, we don't want anybody to overreact without knowing all the details. Do we have our police officers go by the same recommendations? I watched the video. There were several police officers. There was a man. Yes, during the semi altercation, the man's shirt did come up, did show that he did have a pistol. His pistol was actually in a holster. It was not just in the belt loop or the waistband of his pants. It was actually in a holster. Was his hand reaching around his belt area? Yes. However, when we all walk, and if you look in the situation the way the man was, we'd have a tendency, our hands naturally are in that area of our body. Say all this to say, if the police officers are trained to deal with life-threatening situations in their academies, and they go back for refining that training yearly, I have to honestly ask, did you have to shoot this man? His pistol never did come out of the holster, let alone pointed at anybody. How was this a life-threatening situation? How can you justify asking the public to hold off on their demonstrations until all the evidence is out, until all details are out? Don't overreact. when the video shows that you're going to have to explain how your officers, at least one, failed to abide by that. Now, I'm an individual who anybody who knows me is very anti-protest. But if we're going to protest, I want to make sure we protest the proper target. For years, we've been protesting the police and talking about how the police are the bad people. I'm going to tell you they're not. The police are not the bad people. The police are being allowed to practice a very bad practice. And I'm going to explain that in a moment. But right now, I'm going to actually defend the police departments. If Johnny comes out of a window at 2 o'clock in the morning, toting a gun in his hand, and he gets shot, Johnny wasn't the good guy in this case. Every time an individual gets shot, I don't care what color they are, doesn't mean the police were wrong. Okay? But it doesn't give the police an okay to do this, because there has been a lot of shootings and killings. Gardner, New York, that was just downright wrong. When the police, it's sometimes appears that they confront an individual, and when it doesn't go smoothly on their end, because somebody might come across as a negative attitude at that time, the police just don't say, okay, well, move on and have a good day. I'm just trying to touch with you. Instead, they want everybody to bow down. It's almost as if they're over authoritative. Either you do as I say right now, the way I say do it, such as the situation down in Texas in which the man was leaning against a wall. They wanted him to sit. He's leaning against the wall. What's the big deal about leaning against the wall but staying, or versus sitting but staying? We don't have to be so over authoritative and control freaks. Sometimes that creates more problems than it needs to be. Now, here's the biggest issue. Sometimes our public does confront the police. Is that right or wrong? I call that neutral. It's not right or wrong. People should not be afraid of the police. The police should not be afraid of the people. But here's the difference. The people live in the country. We have a constitution that allows them to do a lot of stuff. The police choose to do a job. They got hired on. They chose to put in that application. None of the police officers in our country are drafted. Everybody, whether they're recruited or not, they willfully take the job, and they can willfully quit the job. They don't have to be intimidators. They don't have to be authoritative individuals that only want people that will do exactly what they say, how they say it, when they say it. No. However, when they do that, okay, the public should, there's a point where how far do I want to push this? Is my life that important to protest this? These people are going to shoot. They're going to kill you. They call that being chicken, scared? I don't know. But here's the biggest point. Protesting the police is not the answer. We're going to go back through our legal system. There was a time when attacking a woman and having sexual relations with her was not a crime. It wasn't until there was enough complaints and enough people said, hey, this is wrong, that legislators made it a law that it was a crime. And then prosecutors had to prosecute the crime after police arrested them. Some cases, the police arrest them, they give the information and the evidence to the prosecutor. The prosecutor does or does not prosecute the case. A jury does or does not convict. They do or do not do their prison sentence. The police only arrest based on what is or is not a law. Sometimes they push things from misdemeanors or even in menacing little things and cause them into be big, ugly situations they don't need to be, and they turn into felony cases. But I digress. The point: the police officers are not the ones to be protesting. First, we need to protest with our legislators. Then we need to protest with the prosecutors. This is two different ways. The police are only doing what they've been allowed to do. If there's no law that says the police cannot do this, then what they're doing is not wrong. If there is a law that says they can't do it, but the prosecutors are not prosecuting them, then the police are still not wrong. Morally, yes. Criminally, no. So to protest against the police, to tear up other citizens' properties, this is not the answer, because the police, this is just giving them more reasons to come after you. The answer is the protests need to be directed toward the prosecutors and your legislators. Here's my reasoning. The prosecutors prosecute the case. They investigate. They find the criminal activity. They prosecute the case. If they do not do this, it doesn't matter if you're police or Joe Schmo or Jane Joe. If the prosecutor doesn't prosecute any crime against you, it's not the police's fault. It's the prosecutors that need to be held accountable for the standard of murder, manslaughter, reckless homicide, however they want to call it. But taking of a person's life unjustly is a crime. States and federal law need to enact a higher standard law, because the police officers frequently say, I had to do this because I felt my life was in jeopardy. The problem is that's an inconsistent and unacceptable statement. These police officers willfully took the job. They filled out the application, done a job interview, got hired, went through specific training to teach you how to handle these situations. And if you can't handle the situation, you shouldn't be carrying a gun. And I say all that because if you're not a police officer, you have not received this training. And yet you're still held. If you get into a fight in a bar or get into a situation in a parking lot and you kill somebody and you say, I'm sorry, but I felt fear for my life, you're still going to get arrested. You're still going to get charged. You're still going to go to trial and let a jury decide if you're guilty. And if you are guilty, you're going to go to prison. And that's by you saying your reasoning for committing the act was, I was in fear of my life. They love the prosecution. The law has a little clause that says if you felt fear for your life, you could have ran. Well, the police, no, you don't want them to run. But at the same time, you can't have them say, I feared for my life, while we're spending tax dollars to send them through this training to be able to learn how to deal with and defuse these very situations. They're not supposed to be feared for their life. That's not the type of people we want as a police officer. A person who is afraid for their life going into a hostile situation is going to be trigger happy. You cannot go into a situation already knowing that it's okay to be in fear for your life. That will bring you closer to an itchy trigger than anything. Now, this does not, this, just because the police can get away with this doesn't make them right. But the prosecution is the ones. Now, people want to come at me and say, no, 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 the police are the first responders and they are in these hostile situations. And no, they can't be held for this because Joe Johnny Smith was a criminal and he needed to be off the streets. He maybe did. But what we saw in Chicago was not a criminal. It was a guy that was just wandering around. He didn't need to die. He never pulled his gun. I can't understand how that can be considered a I felt in fear for my life. Because if I would have been in a grocery store parking lot and I would have had a confrontation with an individual just like this and they had a gun in their holster in their shirt, but it never came out and I still killed the person, I'm going to prison. Even though I said I was in fear for my life. It's not going to hold water. And I haven't had any training on how to defuse a situation like that. The police have. As well, I'm going to say our police officers, it needs to be established because a lot of them do commit crimes. We know this. They've been caught. They need to be held to a different standard. Because our police officers are supposed to be abiding by the very laws that they're sworn to protect us from. They're sworn to uphold the laws of the land. If we're going to have any trust and belief in them, they have to uphold their own. They have to be able to be a proud citizen within their community and know that they're doing right. But when they do wrong, because they've been trained, because they've been entrusted to uphold these laws and to protect the rest of the community from individuals that are not upholding these laws, they should be held to a different standard. Example, if a crime calls for 5 years, if a police officer commits it, it should be 10. If it calls for 10, it should be 20. 20, it should be 25 or 30 or life. Whatever ups it to the next thing. My reason for this is the police officers should not be able to commit a crime and then go before the judge and get probation because they should have known better. The justification for this is look at what we have with our teachers. If our teachers do anything with the students, be punished, not lower, not probation, but actually the laws are on the books that a teacher is held to a higher standard. If you have a teacher just out of college, 21 years old, has a relationship with an 18-year-old student, which is legal by age-wise, but is wrong because of the special statutes within the law, that teacher is held to a higher standard. I don't have a problem with that. I'm using that as an example that we set these higher standards or these specific standards for other parts of our community. Teachers are the true first responders. Teachers are the ones that should get all the props. And I don't have a problem with the teacher being held to a higher standard because they are the first responders. They are the individuals supposed to be entrusted to take care of these children and do the right thing by them, set the right positive example. Having a relationship with a student is not the right positive example. I don't have this standard for our police, our educators. There's nothing wrong with having the same type of standard for our police department. That's not for us to protest the police. It's for us to protest the prosecutors It's us to protest the legislators. Get these laws on the books. Get these statutes put into the legal system so the police officers, when they come in, they know they have this standard that they have to be held to. Then the prosecutors need to do their job so that future police officers know going in that they're going to be held to the standard, and they will take pride in the job they do. They don't have to go out into the world hating the community that they're trying to serve. They need to go out and be proud that they're going to protect those communities. They're going to abide by the very laws. And the fact that they would know that they have a higher standard to be held up to would give them a sense of pride to say, I can do this. This is why I do this. And if I can behave properly, we all can behave properly. It takes positive attitudes to make a difference. It takes positive attitudes to make a change. Our protests need to be positive, but they need to be targeted at the right locations. It's your prosecutors. It's your legislators. It also should be in every city, every municipality, every state should have on the books that anytime there is a police shooting, there should be an independent prosecutorial system. Comes in from either an out-of-state location or a cross-state location, somebody who's completely independent, no ties to the legal investigative system in that community whatsoever, so there'll be no repercussions on them. When you put the pressures of the prosecutor, put the pressures on the prosecutor to investigate the very individuals who are supposed to bring them evidence, that makes them have to think twice. I can't prosecute Officer Smith because Officer Smith is going to testify in case 27 next week. If I find Officer Smith guilty of something, case number 27 and everything after that involves Officer Smith, those people go free. So there's prosecutors, I don't care what you say. The prosecutor's view of investigating and charging Officer Smith is going to be tainted because of the local community and any further cases that are out there. So yes, an independent investigative prosecutorial agency from somewhere else, completely neutral, needs to be brought in for every police shooting. And then if there's a prosecution, that needs to go to another jurisdiction. They should not be prosecuted. That should be an automatic. There should not be a thing, even an option, to prosecute the police officer within that very community. Should not be. It should be a given right off the bat. If there's a police shooting, independent prosecutorial system comes in to investigate. If found that charges are warranted, that case needs to be automatically sent to a different jurisdiction so that there is not any, there will be less strings or worries being put on for either over justice being done or under justice. So I reach out to you guys. The police shootings, whether justified or not, our protests need to stop being violent against the police, against our own communities. They need to be directed toward the right targets. The right targets are the prosecutors. The right targets are your legislators. Make sure the legislation has the proper laws to make sure the police are held accountable. Make sure the prosecutors do their job. But in order to do that, get the legislation to say that these shootings, these events, must automatically be taken over by an outside jurisdiction so that there is no big brother, little brother, pat you on the back Can't happen. That's my Shui view for today. I thank you for joining you, and I'll talk to you again later. Thank you.